All right, welcome to the deep dive. You know how this works. We take what you're reading, the articles, the reports, the things that caught your eye, and we dive deep. We extract the key insights, the things you need to know, so you don't have to wade through all the details yourself. You get right to the heart of it without getting lost in the weeds.
Precisely. And this time around, you sent us the weekly crypto market report by Crypto Deep Dive, covering the week of March 24th through the 30th, 2025.
Yeah, a week that sounds like it had a bit of everything going on in the crypto world. The report actually uses the words resilience and volatility to describe it.
Yeah, kind of a push and pull, right? And what's interesting is it was really driven by a bunch of different factors. I mean, we had some macroeconomic news that kind of shook things up, particularly that announcement about tariffs.
Yeah, right.
And then, of course,
Yeah.
there's always the action of the big institutions, the ETFs, the whale activity, those big liquidations that can really move the needle. And then naturally, there were events specific to the blockchain space itself. Things like, changes in trading volume on decentralized exchanges. So not just one story here. It was a mix of everything.
Right, a lot of different currents all swirling around. Okay, well, let's try to untangle some of that. Let's start with Bitcoin. How'd it fare over the week?
Well, it started the week around $86,904, and by Friday, it was sitting close to $86,500.
So down just a hair, really. Not too dramatic.
Yeah, net decrease of about 0.5% for the week. But that doesn't tell the whole story. There were some pretty interesting swings in between.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. For example, the week actually kicked off with some pretty decent positive momentum. On Monday, March 24th, Bitcoin climbed by a healthy 3.33%, hitting that $86,904 mark.
Huh. So what was driving that?
It seems like it's a combination of things. The overall market sentiment was pretty positive, and there was some lingering optimism from the Fed's comments earlier, suggesting that interest rates were going to stay put for a while.
Okay, so starting the week strong.
Exactly. But then things took a turn midweek.
Oh.
Yeah, on the 28th, we got that news about the 25% tariff on automobiles set to kick in April, and that really spooked the markets.
Makes sense. Investors getting a bit risk averse.
Yeah, big time. And Bitcoin wasn't immune. It dropped by 2.5%, landing at around $85,100.
Tariffs hitting crypto. That's a pretty clear sign of how interconnected everything's becoming.
Right. Shows you how quickly events in traditional markets can ripple over into the crypto space. But hey, there's more to the Bitcoin story. Towards the end of the week, we actually saw a bit of a recovery.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the total crypto market cap actually climbed by more than 3%, reaching $2.86 trillion. And importantly, liquidations were pretty muted, staying below 250 million per day. So all that helped push Bitcoin back up a bit.
Back up to around that 86,500 level.
Exactly. So a bit of a roller coaster ride for Bitcoin. Up, then down with that tariff news, then back up again.
Gotcha. Okay, so what about Ethereum? It looks like it took a bit of a bigger hit for the week, down about 4.5%.
It did. And it seems like, the reasons behind its performance were a bit different from Bitcoin's. While Bitcoin was reacting to those bigger economic announcements, Ethereum seemed to be more influenced by what was happening within the crypto market itself. You see, it started off the week pretty stable, even gaining a tiny bit, 0.17% on the 24th.
Okay, but if it was down for the week overall, something must have changed.
You're right. And here's the thing, that small gain actually came with a big jump in trading volume, like almost 40% up to over $8 billion.
A lot of activity, but not translating into a higher price. Interesting. So what happened?
Well, towards the end of the week, things started to get a little dicey. The report highlights this issue with two big Ethereum holders, whales, they call them, who are facing potential liquidations that could have reached a whopping $238 million.
Wow, that's a lot of selling pressure.
Yeah, and the critical price levels for those liquidations were around $805 and $1,787. So as Ethereum's price edged closer to those points, you can imagine people started getting a bit nervous.
For sure. Nobody wants to be on the wrong side of a whale liquidation.
Exactly. And that nervousness contributed to a 1.4% drop on the 29th. And unfortunately, even though there's some good news, like a $4.7 million inflow into Ethereum ETFs,
Right.
it wasn't enough to outweigh those liquidation fears and the competition from other coins like Solana and XRP.
Right.
And, it's telling that Ethereum actually underperformed Bitcoin, which managed to eke out a small gain by the 29th.
Okay, so keeping an eye on those whales was pretty crucial for Ethereum traders last week. All right, let's move on to Solana. It also finished the week down around 3.5%. What was going on there?
So Solana had its own kind of up and down week. It actually started pretty strong, riding the way from its EPF launch earlier in the month.
Right, right.
And on the 24th, it jumped by a solid 4.59%. I think it's, relatively large market cap, almost $69 billion, helped it maintain that momentum.
So still basking in the glow of the ETF.
Yeah, at least initially. But then by the 27th, we saw a 4% drop. And this, it kind of coincided with that broader market weakness we talked about, but it also came with a drop in trading volume on Solana's decentralized exchanges, or DEXs.
Right.
And what's interesting is that this volume was actually down from a peak we saw back in January, suggesting that maybe, interest in Solana's DeFi ecosystem. Yeah, DeFi was starting to wane a bit.
So it seems like maybe the initial ETF hype was fading a bit.
It's possible.
And then on top of that, concerns about the activity level in Solana's DeFi space might have been creeping in.
It's definitely something to consider. And, while Solana did take a pretty sharp daily hit of over 5% at one point, it managed to stabilize around $130 by the end of the week.
Okay.
So there's still some underlying strength there, despite those headwinds.
Right. So the big three, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, all saw some degree of decline. But it sounds like things were even more eventful, shall we say, in the altcoin market.
Oh, always. That's often where you see the really big price swings, and this past week was no different. Yeah, the report talks about some serious volatility in this segment. Like BNX, this one altcoin apparently shot up over 56% in just one day back in March. And, it was likely finished the week up maybe 40%, 50%, just huge gains.
Wow.
Yeah, that kind of rapid price action often reflects speculation in those smaller altcoins, A lot of interest from traders who are looking for the next big thing.
Gotcha. So any other altcoins worth mentioning?
Yeah, there was Cake, the token for PancakeSwap. It's a popular decentralized exchange. It gained almost 10% by mid-March. And it's probably going to end the week up like 5% to 10% overall. So despite that broader market consolidation, there's clearly still strong interest in certain established DeFi platforms. And then there was a BERA, which saw a nice 7% plus gain earlier in the week. Might have ended up like 5% to 8% higher for the week.
Driven by
specific things happening with that project.
Right. Okay, so some altcoins doing really well despite the general downward trend. It's interesting that the report mentions Solana as a top mover, even though it was down for the week, and XRP kind of just stayed flat.
Yeah, it's interesting. It really shows you that the crypto market can be incredibly selective. While those big coins might be swayed by macroeconomic events or those big whale liquidations, individual altcoins can still see those massive rallies based on their own specific news or just, hype and speculation.
Absolutely. All right, so we've covered the price movements of the major players in some of those notable altcoins. Now, the second part of this report dives into the top 10 crypto news stories of the week and their potential impact. Let's go through those, and as we do, let's try to connect them back to the price action we've already talked about.
Sound good.
So number one on the list is President Trump's tariff announcement.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Big one. Definitely had ripple effects across the markets. And like we said, the announcement of that 25% tariff on imported cars, which is set to take effect in early April, that triggered a pretty broad sell-off on March 28th.
Yeah, and the report specifically mentions that Bitcoin dropped 2.5% to $85,100 immediately after that news hit.
Right, and it wasn't just Bitcoin, right? The whole crypto market kind of took a hit.
Oh, absolutely. The total crypto market cap fell by 2.6% within a day, basically mirroring the declines we saw in the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, those traditional markets.
Yeah.
So, it really drives home the point that crypto is not in its own little bubble anymore. It's connected to the global financial system, and investors react accordingly.
Totally. Okay, number two on the list is that Ethereum whale liquidation risk. We touched on this earlier, but how did this news specifically impact the market?
Well, it definitely added fuel to the fire for Ethereum.
Yeah.
The idea that $238 million worth of ETH could be liquidated if those whales hit their critical price levels on the 29th, that really contributed to Ethereum's 1.4% drop that day, and its overall 4.5% decline for the week.
Yeah.
The market was clearly watching that situation very, very closely, knowing that a big price drop could trigger those forced sales and push the price down even further. It's a stark reminder of how leveraged positions can create volatility.
All right, next up is the recovery in the overall crypto market cap. Seems like the week didn't end on a completely sour note.
Thankfully not. By the 29th, the total market cap had bounced back by 3.07%, climbing to $2.86 trillion.
Okay.
So that late week recovery helped offset some of those earlier losses from the tariff announcement. And interestingly, the report points out that Bitcoin's dominance actually increased during this period, suggesting that it might have been leading the charge, so to speak. Ethereum saw a small gain too, but Bitcoin was the stronger performer.
Right.
So that rebound suggests that sentiment was shifting back towards positive territory as the week came to a close.
Okay, good. Number 4 is the dip in Solana's price, along with that decline in DeFi trading volume. We talked about this a bit earlier, but what's the main takeaway here?
I think the key point is that there's a pretty clear connection between Solana's 4% price drop on the 27th and that lower trading volume on its DEXs. The fact that this volume was significantly lower than its peak back in January, even with that earlier excitement around the ETF launch, suggests that, maybe Solana's DeFi ecosystem is struggling to maintain momentum.
So maybe an ETF launch isn't a magic bullet for price appreciation.
Right. Especially if the activity on the network itself starts to fade.
Okay, number 5 is Bitcoin holding above $86,000 earlier in the week. This seems like a positive sign before that tariff news came out.
Yeah, it was. On March 24th, the fact that Bitcoin was able to, trade with strength, hit that $86,904 mark and hold above those lower price levels that really set a positive tone for the week initially. The fact that trading volume increased and Bitcoin closed the day with a solid gain, 2.55%, shows that there was some genuine buying interest and strength there before the negative news hit.
Gotcha.
And it also just underscores, Bitcoin's continued dominance.
For sure. All right, number 6 is that mixed performance of altcoins, which we touched on earlier. What's the main news angle here?
I think it's just how diverse the performance was across the altcoin market. You had some coins like BNX, Keiki, and BERA seeing those massive gains driven by specific developments or, frankly, just speculation.
Yeah.
And then you had others like XRP basically going nowhere, and even Solana, after that initial jump, ending up down.
Right.
So, it shows that the altcoin market is very selective. It's all about individual project narratives and trader sentiment, which can lead to wildly different outcomes.
Absolutely. Okay, number 7 covers those small inflows into Ethereum spot ETFs. Sounds like that wasn't the big positive catalyst that some people were hoping for.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks were expecting more. That $4.7 million inflow, while positive, was pretty tiny, especially compared to the $93.2 million outflow from Bitcoin ETFs during the same period.
Right.
And despite that inflow, Ethereum actually underperformed.
Yeah.
So those modest inflows weren't enough to overcome those other challenges. It was facing the whale liquidations, the competition.
Yeah.
It's possible that we're seeing some shifting institutional preferences, or at least a more cautious approach towards Ethereum at the moment.
All right, number 8 is an interesting one. Rumors about GameStop potentially making some moves in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah, that was interesting. You see, after GameStop announced that crypto-friendly investment policy a while back, people were really anticipating some kind of Bitcoin-related news when they released their Q4 results on the 25th.
Right.
And while nothing concrete came out by the end of the week, all that speculation did contribute to some price volatility in Bitcoin. So it shows you how sensitive the market is to any potential moves by big companies into crypto, even just rumors. It can create opportunities or it can create anxiety.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, number 9 is Pakistan looking into Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, this is a potentially big development. The proposal from Pakistan's Crypto Council to explore Bitcoin mining using surplus energy, that's gaining traction.
Okay.
It's a sign that countries around the world are starting to see the potential of using underutilized energy resources for mining and maybe even creating a more formal regulatory framework for crypto. Now, it didn't really impact Bitcoin's price in the short term, but it could have some significant long-term implications,
Right.
especially for Bitcoin's global adoption.
And finally, number 10, Vitalik Buterin goes viral.
Yes, that video of Vitalik apparently meowing at a robot. It was all over crypto Twitter. But hey, as entertaining as it was, the report correctly points out that it had absolutely no effect on Ethereum's price.
Right, which, as we know, was down for the week.
Exactly. Just a reminder that the crypto world is full of weird and wonderful things that grab our attention but don't necessarily move markets.
Okay, so to recap the week of March 24th to 30th, we saw a crypto market that was really dealing with a whole mix of influences. External pressures, internal dynamics, news, speculation, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, we saw how a global event like those tariffs could trigger a widespread risk-off sentiment that impacted even Bitcoin. Then you had those crypto-specific events, those whale liquidations, the changes in DeFi activity driving the performance of individual assets. And of course, the altcoin market continued to be, well, the altcoin market. Huge potential for both gains and losses.
It really does feel like these crypto markets are becoming more and more integrated with traditional finance. I mean, that reaction to the tariff news was a pretty clear example of that.
Absolutely. The idea that crypto exists in its own isolated world is fading fast. As institutions get more involved and regulations become more defined, those connections are only going to get stronger.